On the surface, Australia's international education sector is a national triumph. Glossy university brochures depict vibrant multicultural campuses, promising a world-class education under the southern sun. The economic data appears to validate this narrative. In the 2023-24 financial year, international education became Australia's fourth largest export, injecting a staggering $51 billion into the economy. This revenue stream has been credited with delivering more than half of Australia's GDP growth in 2023, a contribution so significant that it is said to have almost single-handedly kept the nation out of a recession. By all official metrics, it is a roaring success. Yet this narrative of prosperity is starkly at odds with the lived experience of many Australians. While the export dollars flow in, citizens are confronted with a different reality. Unprecedented queues for rental properties, stagnating wages, overburdened public transport, and the pervasive sense that our cities and regional towns are buckling under the strain. If this industry is making Australia so wealthy, why do so many feel they are going backwards? This video argues that the relentless, profit-driven expansion of international education by Australian universities is not an unqualified success story. It is a high-stakes economic model that has fundamentally transformed our institutions of higher learning into corporate behemoths. In doing so, it has ignited a series of cascading crises in housing, infrastructure, labor rights, and even our national innovation capacity that are actively degrading the quality of life for millions of Australians. This analysis will follow the financial incentives to connect the dots between the booming export figures and the mounting social costs, seeking to answer the $50 billion question: are our universities building Australia's future, or are they selling it off to the highest bidder? The scale of Australia's international education industry has reached a magnitude that redefines the role of the university in the national economy. The post-pandemic rebound has been nothing short of explosive. After borders reopened, the number of international students onshore surged from just under 300,000 in 2022 to 560,000 by the close of 2023. By early 2024, this figure had climbed to over 1 million students across all education sectors, including universities, vocational training, and schools. This influx has translated into an unprecedented financial windfall. The total value of education exports reached $51.0 billion in the 2023-24 financial year, with tuition fees alone accounting for $20.6 billion. To put this in perspective, education now surpasses coal as a national export. This revenue is not merely a supplementary income stream for universities. For many, it has become the core of their business model. Across Australia's major universities, fees from international students now constitute between 15% and over 40% of their total revenue. This dependency is reflected in the balance sheets of individual institutions. In 2024, the University of New South Wales reported a 61% increase in foreign student revenue to $1.4 billion, while Monash University saw a 42% rise. Four of Australia's largest universities, including Sydney and Melbourne, now each generate over $1 billion annually from international student fees alone. This profound financial reliance fundamentally alters the mission and priorities of a university. When an institution's budget is contingent on a single, highly volatile income stream for up to 40% of its operational funding, its focus must inevitably shift from purely academic pursuits to corporate functions of marketing, global recruitment, and financial risk management. This has led to the effective corporatization of higher education, where institutions behave less like public centers of learning and more like export-oriented corporations that happen to have a university attached. It is a model where the imperative is less publish or perish and more enroll or go broke. This business model creates a profound systemic vulnerability that becomes a primary driver of the negative consequences explored throughout this report. A university's financial health is now directly tethered to geopolitical stability, foreign currency fluctuations, and the shifting visa policies of both Australia and key source countries. To mitigate the immense risk this creates, university administrators are compelled to find ways to cut costs and build financial buffers. The largest and most flexible operational cost is staffing. Consequently, the financial model itself provides a powerful structural incentive for the mass casualisation of the academic workforce, a mechanism that allows the institution to rapidly shed staff costs if international enrollments decline. The degradation of teaching quality is, therefore, not an unfortunate side effect, but a direct and predictable outcome of this financial dependency. Furthermore, the sheer scale of the revenue involved makes intense political lobbying an operational necessity for university leaders. With billions of dollars in revenue and, as the sector claims, over 250,000 jobs at stake, any government policy that threatens the flow of students, such as visa caps or stricter integrity measures, is perceived as an existential threat to university budgets. As a result, peak bodies like Universities Australia and the Group of Eight act as powerful industry lobbyists, framing any attempt at regulation as an act of economic vandalism. This establishes a dynamic where the broader national interest in areas like sustainable population growth, housing affordability, and research integrity is pitted directly against the financial interests of the universities, who have a multi-billion-dollar incentive to ensure their priorities prevail. Analysis of the international education market reveals that for a significant portion of students, the primary product being purchased is not an academic qualification, but a pathway to temporary work rights and potential permanent residency in Australia. This dynamic is openly acknowledged in policy circles. A report from Victoria University's Mitchell Institute states plainly that migration and international education are intertwined, and that migration system settings have a material effect on the international education market. The central mechanism facilitating this is the temporary graduate visa, subclass 485. This visa allows international graduates of Australian institutions to live and work in the country for a period of 2 to 4 years, depending on their qualification. The prospect of securing this visa is a major pull factor for students selecting Australia as a study destination. A Grattan Institute report describes Australia's post-study work rights as among the most generous in the world, arguing they are in fact too generous as they contribute to a large and growing cohort of permanently temporary migrants who struggle to find a clear path to residency. The influence of this migration incentive is evident in enrollment data. The market is heavily concentrated in a few key source countries, most of them developing nations where the prospect of working in a high-wage economy is a powerful draw. In the year to May 2025, students from just 3 countries, China, 23%, India, 17%, and Nepal, 8%, accounted for nearly half of all international students in Australia. The most popular fields of study are not niche academic disciplines but broad, commercially oriented degrees in management and commerce, followed by information technology. These courses are often perceived as offering clearer pathways to occupations on skilled migration lists. The system that uses migration as an incentive also creates a pipeline of vulnerable individuals who are susceptible to exploitation. Students are often sold a dream of working and settling in Australia, frequently taking on substantial debt to pay for tuition fees that can be described as exy or expensive. Upon arrival, the need to work to cover living costs is immediate. While the Reserve Bank of Australia notes that, in aggregate, students add more to economic demand than supply, many do work, earning an estimated $13.4 billion in 2023 to 24. Their temporary visa status, coupled with financial desperation, makes them prime targets for unscrupulous employers. Research from UNSW and UTS has found that wage theft is endemic and business as usual, with a landmark survey revealing that 3 in 4 international students earn below the minimum casual wage. The migration incentive, therefore, does not just attract students. It creates a systemic supply of precarious, easily exploited labor that underpins key sectors of the economy, like hospitality and food delivery. The university, by collecting high fees up front, acts as the first and most profitable step in this exploitation pipeline. While universities reap the financial rewards of the international education boom, the costs, or externalities, are borne by the wider Australian community in the form of strained infrastructure and a deepening housing crisis. The link between student numbers and housing affordability is contentious. University lobby groups and the Student Accommodation Council consistently argue that students are being used as scapegoats for a broader policy failure. They frequently cite national-level data showing that international students comprise only 4% to 6% of the total rental market, a seemingly negligible figure. However, this national average is a deeply misleading statistic that masks the acute, localized pressure created by the industry. The impact is one of hyper-concentration. An analysis by the Property Council of Australia, an industry body, concedes that international students are heavily concentrated in just 13 local government areas, LGAs, across the country. In these specific precincts, such as the Adelaide CBD or the Sydney suburb of Burwood, international students constitute nearly a quarter of all renters. It is in these communities that the housing market comes under immense strain. Parliamentary inquiries have documented direct testimony from students detailing weekly rent increases of over $100, and the near impossibility of securing accommodation close to their campus, leading to overcrowding and exploitation by predatory landlords. This strain is not limited to major metropolitan centers. Regional universities facing decades of declining government investment and aging infrastructure have come to see international students as a financial lifeline. They actively lobby the government for specific migration incentives, such as advantageous permanent residency points, to lure students away from the cities. This strategy, however, creates a severe paradox. The same submissions that call for more students also acknowledge that small regional towns lack the capacity, specifically in housing, public transport, and social services, to accommodate a sudden and significant spike in population. This is akin to trying to fix a leaky boat by inviting more people on board. The result is a business model that, out of financial desperation, risks overwhelming the limited resources of the very communities these universities are supposed to serve, placing immense pressure on local infrastructure and potentially harming social harmony. This situation reveals a fundamental disconnect between federal policy and local planning. The federal government, heavily influenced by university lobbying, sets visa and migration policies that facilitate a large-scale influx of students. The revenue from these students flows directly to the universities, which operate under federal legislation. The costs, however, are almost entirely socialized at the state and local levels. State governments must fund overwhelmed transport networks, while local councils are left to manage the consequences of acute housing shortages, increased demand for waste management, and the need for additional community services for a population they did not plan for. This creates a classic economic scenario of privatized gains for the universities and socialized losses for the taxpayer and local resident. The federal government's recent policy shift, which proposes to link a university's ability to enroll more international students to its investment in new student accommodation, is a tacit admission of this long-standing policy failure. A university's core mission extends beyond teaching. It is to be an engine of discovery, creating the new knowledge and research that drives national progress and economic complexity. Yet, as Australian universities have become more commercially focused, their performance on this core mission has faltered significantly when compared to global peers. The data reveals a nation falling dangerously behind. In 2021-22, Australia's gross expenditure on research and development, GERD, was a mere 1.68% of its GDP. This figure is dramatically below the OECD average of 2.7%. This is not a recent development, but the result of a sustained decline. Australia's R&D investment has been in free fall relative to the economy for more than a decade, plummeting from a level near the OECD average in 2008 to its current low. A key driver of this is dwindling public investment, with direct government spending on R&D slumping to its lowest ever share of GDP, just 0.49%. The international student industry is directly implicated in this dysfunctional funding model. A landmark report from the Grattan Institute titled The Cash Nexus revealed that universities use surpluses from teaching revenue to cross-subsidize underfunded research activities. The report conservatively estimated that over $2 billion in teaching profits are diverted to fund research, explicitly stating that international students contribute a substantial proportion of this surplus. This exposes a broken and unsustainable model for national innovation. Instead of being supported by strategic, long-term public investment, Australia's research capacity is being propped up by the profits from a volatile commercial teaching business. This model produces perverse outcomes. While Australia's research sector is highly productive in terms of academic publications, ranking 9th in the OECD, it is abysmal at translating this research into tangible commercial outcomes. On the Global Innovation Index's measure of efficiency, Australia ranks a dismal 81st out of 143 countries. On the crucial measure of collaboration between large businesses and higher education institutions on innovation, Australia ranks 29th out of 30 OECD countries. This system creates a self-defeating cycle that prevents Australia from building a truly knowledge-based economy. The process begins with chronic government underfunding of university research. In response, universities are forced to aggressively pursue international student revenue to fill the gap. This pursuit requires them to operate like corporations, focusing immense resources on global marketing, recruitment, and offering commercially popular but often low-innovation courses like business and commerce. This corporate focus diverts institutional energy and capital away from the difficult long-term work of building deep research capabilities and fostering the industry partnerships necessary for commercialization. The result is a national R&D hamster wheel. We run faster and faster on the international student treadmill just to plug funding gaps, while our overall national R&D investment as a percentage of GDP falls further and further behind our global competitors. Here's the uncomfortable truth about Australia's multi-billion-dollar international education machine. It runs on precarity. The Universities Accord found 50–80% of undergraduate teaching is now done by casuals, and the NTEU says fewer than 1 in 3 uni workers has a secure job. This isn't seasonal flex, it's a system. 22% of casual academics have been cycling short contracts for 10+ years, acting as budget shock absorbers, so universities can ride the ups and downs of fee-paying internationals. When COVID hit, an estimated 40,000 uni jobs vanished, mostly insecure roles, because contracts simply weren't renewed. The human cost is brutal. Over 73% of staff report poor work environments, 67% poor psychosocial safety, and 66% burnout. Casual teachers often lack offices, support, or paid time for prep, marking, consultations, or research, eroding class quality. And yes, it shows. Studies link higher casualization to lower student satisfaction, weaker staff-student relationships, and higher dropout risk. That's the core contradiction. Universities market a world-class product while delivering it through a deprofessionalized, demoralized workforce with no incentive or time to pursue excellence. The result? Stressed academics, thinner teaching, less current knowledge in the classroom, and both domestic and international students getting stitched up by a profit-maximizing model that undercuts the very promise of higher education. The evidence presents a clear and interconnected chain of consequences. The relentless pursuit of international student revenue has transformed Australia's unis from public institutions of learning into corporatized export businesses. This has fostered a system where the product being sold is often not just an education, but a pathway to a visa and life in Australia. The resulting, largely unplanned influx of temporary migrants has placed immense strain on the infrastructure of our cities and regional towns, most acutely felt in a deepening housing crisis, creating massive socialized costs that are borne by the Australian public. This intense commercial focus has come at a steep price for our national intellect. It has starved our research and development sector of the strategic investment it needs, forcing it into a dependent and dysfunctional relationship with a volatile commercial revenue stream, causing our innovation capacity to fall far behind that of our global competitors. The entire precarious structure is built on the backs of an exploited, casualized academic workforce, a practice that fundamentally compromises the quality of the very education being sold to both domestic and international students. The ultimate outcome is an erosion of the quality of life for everyday Australians. We're facing a future of entrenched housing unaffordability, underfunded public services, a less innovative economy, and a degraded higher education system for our own children. This is not just a debate about university funding models or immigration statistics. It is a fundamental debate about what kind of country we want to be. Do we want our public institutions to serve the public good, or a corporate bottom line? The current trajectory suggests a choice has been made, one that prioritizes short-term profits over the long-term well-being and prosperity of the nation. It is time for a recalibration. Comment which problem of higher education should be addressed first. The best comment will be pinned.